Hello everybody, and thank you for joining today's webinar. I'm Stephen Bamford from Business and Decisions Life Sciences. It's so good to see so many of our customers here today. The session will be recorded, and a copy of the slides and a recording of the session will be sent out later this week. In today's meeting, I will run through the EudraCT requirements and then give a detailed walkthrough of the EudraCT system. We will then look at the process for the creation and uploading of data. Finally, I will briefly cover the range of services that are here to help you implement the process within your webinar. Please feel free to ask questions using the panel on the GoToWebinar system. We will answer as many of these questions as possible and will follow up where need be. We are in the process of supporting customers who are new to this process. No company has been through the whole process yet. We might not know all the answers to your questions, especially if they are very technical. We are doing this webinar early in the process to share our knowledge, as we thought it was better to share what we know now, as the 20th of February and the 20th of July deadlines are fast approaching. We will endeavour to find answers to your questions that we are unable to answer today, and then share the information as requested. Thank you. So first of all, I'm going to give a brief overview of the requirements that sponsor companies need to adhere to. This diagram explains the requirements. We've split the studies into different categories, and we'll run through these one at a time. First of all, proactive. This is for all studies with a last patient last visit after the 21st of July 2014, that's 6 months ago. For these studies, you have to submit both a synopsis and the required clinical data into the EudraCT system within 12 months of last patient last visit, or within 6 months if the study contains pediatric subjects. Now this could be as early as next month for a pediatric study that had a last patient last visit during the end of July last year. Next, let's look at the retrospective studies. Now these are studies with a last patient last visit between the 21st of July 2013 and the 20th of July 2014. So that's the 1 year prior to the July 2014 date that I just mentioned. For all of these studies, with a last patient last visit during that time, you have to submit the synopsis and the clinical data, but importantly, you have to submit all this information by the 21st of July this year. That's 6 months tomorrow. So in study from July 2013 needs both the synopsis and the clinical data submitted into the system. If we now look at the legacy, let's first of all deal with legacy synopsis. Here, every study with a EudraCT number from May 2004 needs to have the synopsis submitted into the system. Now you do have 18 months from now to submit this information, but this could easily run into hundreds of studies that need to be processed. Now the final grouping on this slide, the one that's in a slightly different colour, is legacy data. This is probably the most complicated to try and explain briefly. But this covers the same period, so from May 2004 to July 2013. So in summary here, if you've run any studies during this time that include pediatrics, then you do have to go back to 2004 and submit the data as well as the synopsis of the study. Now this depends on whether your pediatric study was covered by Article 45 or Article 46, the deadline, or 18 months time, July 2016. If the study does not include any pediatric subjects, then you have the option to submit the data, although you do have to submit the synopsis as per the previous grouping. And it's worth saying that for all of the above, as reflected in Section 4 of the guidance, phase 3 and phase 4 studies, regardless of whether the medicinal product concerned has already received a marketing authorization in the European community or not. As I mentioned at the start, these slides will be shared with you, so there's no need to write these down. Policy and the scope of the policy, together with the live website link, and also the link to the website where the public will be. I'm now going to cover what needs to be submitted. We can separate out what needs to be submitted into two sections. Firstly, the study synopsis. Now you can upload the synopsis that is according to Annex 1 of the ICH3 guidance. Now there are multiple supported formats, but you do need to be aware of the 50 megabyte file size. Now the major addition, however, to this policy is the request to submit certain clinical data. When I take you through the EudraCT system walkthrough, we're looking at each data type in more detail. What you'll see is that you have the option to input the data through either a web interface or as an XML file. The XML file needs to follow a very prescriptive schema that the EMA have designed. Now, file size can become an issue with XML, so it does need some thought and some consideration. We have experiences of deciding whether to input data or submit via XML, and we can consult with your companies depending on factors such as the number of studies that you run each year, as well as the level of standardization within your company, and also the number of legacy standards or even legacy companies that need to be considered when you go back to 2004. This simple chart here just shows the options that are available to you. The EMA actually allow a hybrid approach because for most studies the XML is the better option to allow adverse event entry. So you can either enter everything via data entry, enter everything via XML, or there's this hybrid of doing everything via the website apart from adverse events, which is then submitted via XML. There are no financial fines for non-compliance, unlike the FDA with the clinicaltrials.gov. Instead, the EMA has gone down the name and shame route. You can see here the sections of the documentation that speak about non-compliance and also about issues. For example, the EMA may flag non-conformance on a public website. And as for quality, they might remove certain information from the public website. They might highlight that they have concerns regarding the information, and they may very well add a notice to the public record. I'm sure no sponsor company would like to see their companies listed in these manners. EudraCT is similar to clinicaltrials.gov, but there are differences between the two approaches. The XML schema is formatted differently between the two systems. There are also different terminologies used. You can see some of the examples here. And of course, the business requirements are different as well. So for the purposes of EudraCT, we're just referring to trials that have been registered in Europe, while the clinicaltrials.gov makes it compulsory to publish publish the results for any trials of study drugs, biologics, or devices that are approved, licensed, or cleared by the FDA as per the 801 requirements. So I'm just going to move now into a very, very short live poll. Gives me a chance to have a quick drink of water and just get a flavour for the experience that we have on the call today, and then I'll then move into the live demo. So we've got three very, very quick questions. So we're going to start off with question number one. So were you already aware of the guidance? I'm just going to launch the poll now, and if you can just choose one of the answers in the next 10 seconds or so, please. I guess 2/3 of the people have voted already, so just give it a couple more sessions. I'm pleased to see that 90% of the people have voted. That's a really good compliance rate there. Well done. And okay, I'm going to close the poll now, and I'm going to share the results. So were you aware of the EudraCT requirements to sponsor companies? Half the people were partially aware. 4 out of 10 people were completely aware, and almost 1 in 5 people, this is all news to them. So, well, I hope you enjoy the webinar. Okay, let's just move on to the second question. Now, this is around, do you already have a process? So, do you already have a process to respond to the backlog deadline of this year, which is 6 months tomorrow? So, so either yes or partially or completely, or no, you're not prepared, and hopefully no one's going to say what deadline because you've just seen the slide. So let's give it a few more seconds, please. Okay, 3 seconds left. Okay, I'm going to close the poll. So do you already have a process to respond to the backlog deadline? Looks like 2/3 of the people have a process, either completely or partially, and 1/3 of the people are either undecided or they do not yet have a process. Okay, final question, and then we get back on with the slides. Just a question around how do you plan to address the EudraCT requirements moving forward? Do you look to incorporate it in your reporting trial process? Are you going to run it as a parallel process, some other means, or you're yet to decide? Just give it a few more seconds. Okay, 2 seconds to go. And here's the results for the final question. So 41% of people are going to incorporate it into the trial reporting process, and 15% are going to run it as a parallel process. And the other people haven't yet decided, but maybe that gives you a flavor for what other companies are doing. Okay, thank you for your interactions there. I'm going to actually move back now to the slides. Just bear with me 2 secs. I'll work out how to get back to the slides. Okay, we're now going to go through the system. This is going to be done through a series of screenshots, as we only have live studies in our results account, and it'd be inappropriate to show them. So first of all, the login page. This is the login page, and you can access it from the 3rd link in the slide with all the links on that you're going to receive later. And first of all, you need to have an account. Now, to enter the data, the type of account that you need is a results user account, and you request this up here on the top left-hand corner. An administrative trial can work on this word. You can then log in. You've been assigned. You've got three. You can view the study, or you can view the assigned users. Now, due to client confidentiality, I've chosen one study, and I've clicked the edit the study link, and we've now arrived at the index page for that particular study. Now, on this first page is where you can attach the study synopsis of the study. You can see it highlighted in red down the bottom. Now, if I scroll down, imagine I'm scrolling down the web page now, for each of the different data sections. It provides summary information here in the middle, so you can see 1 sponsor, 1 period, 2 arms, 2 products, It provides summary details showing the progress of the data entry, and you can click on the titles of each section to then enter data in each section. You can either do it on the left-hand side margin, or you can do it on this center page here. And I'm going to go through them one by one now, starting with trial information. So this is the trial information section, and this is the first page. It's very self-explanatory, and it's a copy and paste from the front page of the protocol for the title, the blue box there. The top two fields that are being blacked out there, the EudraCT number and the protocol code. Now these are automatically filled in from the EudraCT database. So you don't have the option to fill them in, but you've only got to fill in the full title of the trial. So if I scroll down again, the trial information page, this second section, there are more study identifiers, some of which are again automatically filled out, and others that still need to be entered by the team. Further down still, there's a section that asks a number of questions regarding pediatrics in the study. This is then followed by a section regarding an overview of the results analysis status. Now, for the date of the interim final analysis, this is the date of the last patient last visit, not the date of the CSR. This is what drives the timelines for the required submission and deadline. Very briefly, the next section requires more data on the trial, but as you can see, there's a lot of information that needs to be entered here. Now, moving towards the bottom of the trial information, now we have to enter the actual number of subjects per country. The planned number of subjects comes from the initial EudraCT submission. You can see the center column here that's been colored out. But the plan number comes from this initial EudraCT submission. So what you're doing is you're entering what actually happened versus what was planned. So this is the actual number of subjects per country. And the final section of trial information, we need to enter the subjects falling into each age range. And as previously, the data from the initial submission is fixed within the system. Okay, I'm going to move on to subject disposition section of the data entry part. Now, firstly, we need to enter the recruitment details. Now, for your information, I've taken the supportive text from the I for information boxes, and I've inserted them into the boxes in the blue text here. So it will help the slides make more sense when you look at them later. So further down subject disposition, we enter some screening details, and then we need to add the study periods. Now, for each period, you need to add more detailed information. So here's period 1, and the first set of information that's required for each period is regarding the blinding status of that particular arm of the study. Then for each period, you have to enter the arm information. Later on in the process, when dealing with the adverse events, we will also enter the treatment groups. But for now, it's just the arm information. So for a crossover trial, the arm will be different to the treatment groups. This process of adding the period and the arms is then completed for the rest of the study design. The third section, the third set of data to enter is the baseline information for the study. It's a short section, and it collects summary statistics from the study data on basic demographic information. Next is the endpoint section. This is needed for all endpoints from the study and is usually a lot of work. It can be done through an XML file upload, but unless you have several very similar studies, you probably wouldn't benefit from the investment in creating the XML. It's best then entered from a well-written clinical study report, hopefully you have them, but ideally someone who understands statistics, and you're going to see why. Just like when we added the period, here you have to add each of the endpoint definitions. For each endpoint definition, the system then asks for the result to be entered. These endpoints need to be defined in a standardized way. And first of all, we need to enter information regarding the endpoint, such as the unit and whether it's a primary or secondary endpoint. Next, for each reporting group, we have to enter the actual statistical result from the study. Here, you can see that we're just dealing with the mean and standard deviation. We would then have to enter details regarding the statistical analysis. I will not go into too much detail on these next three screens, but you can see that it's asking for clarification of the analysis type, as well as the statistical method that was used, and finally the parameter type. The last major section is adverse events. This is either entered by hand or via XML. We strongly recommend the XML route for adverse events. This process can become very tedious, and you're going to see that in the next few screenshots. On this first page, the frequency threshold for reporting non-serious adverse events needs to be entered. Now, you can set this as a maximum of 5%. So any adverse event with a threshold of 5% or greater would need to be recorded. You can, if you so wish, drop this to 0 and provide all adverse events. We're assuming that most companies will keep it at 5%, which is the maximum. And remember, this is only for the non-serious adverse events. It also asks for the measure reporting version, and you're going to see this later in the following slides. Scrolling down, we can see the adverse event data is then split into three main sections: the reporting groups, the serious, and then the non-serious adverse events. We'll take each of these in turn, starting with the adverse event reporting groups. So we need to start off by clicking Add Reporting Group. Here, for each treatment, we need to add the title and the description, followed by the summary statistics for this reporting group, such as the number of subjects who were exposed to that particular treatment and the number of subjects, both serious and non-serious. These are the overall numbers, not just the ones above the cutoff limit that was entered previously. Once we've done this for all treatment groups, we now move on to the non-serious adverse event section. We now need to add an adverse event one at a time. We need to enter the system organ class and the preferred term, and we have the option to override the dictionary details that we entered a few slides ago. For each treatment group, we have 3 data points to add: the subject's affected number, the subject's exposed number, and the occurrences number as well. Now back to the adverse event summary page, and now we move to the serious adverse event section. We again need to add each adverse event one at a time. This process is very similar to the non-serious adverse events with the system organ class and the dictionary information, but this time we have 6 data points to add. We have the same 3 as before, but now further information regarding relatedness and death. I'm going to very briefly show you what happens if you choose to use the XML route for uploading data into the system. I'm going to focus on the adverse events as we've only just looked at them. If we were to enter this data into XML format via the screen, rather than via the screen, the XML would look like this. Now, you might not be able to code in XML, but you can still make out the key information, such as the numbers. BDLS have developed software that will help generate this code, so it doesn't have to be created from scratch every time. That'll save money, time, and it also cuts down on the chance of errors. Same again, but this time for the serious adverse events. Now, what's worth pointing out here is the EudraCT ID number. This is a specific EMA code that needs to come from a lookup table, and it needs to correspond to the system organ class. So it's different to the measure code. It's a specific EMA code. And finally, the non-serious adverse event code is very similar to what you've just seen with the serious adverse event code. You've seen the XML code for adverse events. The code for all of the data is created in a very similar way. Now, this is what happens when we upload the XML code. First, you have to choose whether you want to do the full study or the adverse events. Remember that chart where there were three options? You either do everything or just adverse events. If we choose to upload an adverse event file, during the upload it runs some validation checks. Now here you can see that there are errors with the dataset format, and the system's told you this. Now on this screen, here's another set of errors, this time showing you that many different checks are carried out by the system. This time it looks like there are issues with the reporting groups. So finally, once the format's been sorted out, the file is then accepted by the system. You must remember to then save the study so that the file remains in the system. During the XML uploads you've just seen, there are lots of data validation. The system also checks between data sets, for example. It will check the number of subjects on the exposure table and on the adverse event table, and if you've got more subjects in the adverse event table than the exposure table, it will throw an error warning. One thing you must be made aware of is that the system will automatically calculate the percentages linked to the adverse event tables. You don't enter the percentages, the system will calculate them for you. Now, we've developed a process for checking these types of system functions to ensure that the data is the same as what we would expect it to be. And finally, even though there is a help desk, it's an email-based system, we're finding that it's already under great pressure, and from start to finish you can expect several weeks until you get a full resolution on a particular issue. When all the data has been uploaded into the system, you can then choose to run the validate full data set. The system will then show you which errors it's found and split it out by section. Once there are no more errors and the data is approved by the sponsor, the system then assumes the study is final and it will be published within 15 days. It's worth remembering that once you've submitted data into the EudraCT system, anyone can download the data. Now, sponsors need to get it right, and this is where BDLS can help. I'd now like to discuss with you some of the different ways that BDLS can support you and your companies with the creation and submission of the XML files and the study summary information. We can provide support in three different areas. The first is supporting you and your backlog reporting. We can also assist on developing the expertise. Sorry, let's start this again. We can provide support in three different areas. The first is supporting you with backlog reporting. We can also assist on developing the expertise and processes within your company to deal with submissions on an ongoing basis. And finally, we can provide a consultancy service that can address how you work with your implementation partners to ensure adherences to the correct guidelines with the most cost-effective and time-efficient processes. Taking all three, one by one. Over the last 9 years, we've handled almost 1,000 data conversion studies of CDIS data standards. We know how to deal with backlog reporting and understand how to convert legacy data into a standardized format. Remembering that you have to go back to 2004 and check all studies and submit data from any of these studies where there's pediatrics. Whichever way you look at it, this will be seen as a burden for sponsors. Large sponsors will have a phenomenal amount of data to sift through and processes before the deadlines. Smaller sponsors will have to find the data and find it in a consistent format, or maybe not even have the resource available to assist. Either way, BDLS are here to help. As part of our service, we will ensure quality by introducing parallel programming tasks as well as cross-checks for any similar statistical report or publication as part of our internal validation. As explained, this is extremely important, especially around ensuring the statistical results from the automatic downloaded reports are expected. BDLS can work with you to design a process that works with your current processes. We can examine whether embedding this into a new process into your clinical study report process or running it as a parallel process is best for you. This is a new process and the XML code is quite complex to deliver. Regardless of what they say, not all CROs will have the in-house expertise yet to fully understand the XML structures that are required. Finally, for consultancy, linked to the previous process development, consultants to work with you to ensure compliance to the requirements and to work with both you and your resource partners. On the next slide, I'm going to show you one of the processes we have developed already. Now, we could do everything in XML, but that relies on having a full metadata repository and a lot of standardization across the company. This could be considered in the future, but for now, our experiences show that it's usually best to do adverse events via XML and all other data via data entry, but that does differ depending on the sponsor. If you look at the top right-hand corner, finalized documents are used, and people with knowledge of clinical trials and statistics enter and then QC the required information. Down on the bottom right, we ensure that the report is downloaded both in PDF and XML version for a third level of final QC. As for the rest of the graphic here, 3 types of reports need to be created. You can see the level of details, whether it's age categories or subjects per country. Now, these could be in the CSR, otherwise they need to be created. Adverse event statistics, well, we create the corresponding statistics as the text of the PDF report in line with the XML file, as the XML is difficult to interpret in your raw form, as you just seen a few slides ago. I'd like to very quickly leave you with an additional benefit that this process could bring to your company. Even though this is an additional process and one that will cause some additional work over the coming months, BDLS can see that a metadata management process could be formed. If handled properly, a project like this could easily form a data mart that will allow quick and reliable interrogation of your previous study history. Imagine being able to answer questions like these on the screen within minutes. We'll be delighted to discuss this with you in more detail. Just very briefly, for anyone who's not sure, BDLS is based in Brussels. We've got offices in France, the UK and the USA. We've been providing dedicated support to the life science industry for over the last 9 years. Since 2007, we've grown steadily, and last year we reached 250 employees. If you've got any other outsourcing needs, and we can help, whether it be CDIS, biometrics, real-world studies, drug submissions, and please do contact me if you would like a capabilities presentation. So thank you for your time today. We now have a short time available for questions and answers. When you do close the webinar, you'll receive a 5-question survey. Your views are important to us. Please provide feedback so we can evaluate the usefulness of these webinars. And finally, should you need more support, please don't hesitate to contact me. So let's move now to the questions and answers.